Sorry, I was getting just a little practice time in there. So we're talking about old time this week. I don't know if this is an old time location, but it's my office. These look old timey, right? Well, Torino brings up some sociological jargon, some maybe a different way to think about music and especially old time. So first, a cultural formation, broadly integrated unit in which people would interact even if the dances that he's talking about didn't exist. In a cultural formation, children grow up in it. They learn parts of the practices at an early age. There tends to be little self-consciousness about performance and creative license. What formations are you a part of? Like you grow up in a religious organization, a church, sports, I guess, or music if you grow up doing it all the time. This could be a cultural formation. And he talks about larger scale examples, right? Capitalism is a formation. It's a common experience of living and being and doing. Old-time music making can be a formation, I guess, if you grow up in it. But it can also be a cultural cohort, a smaller organizational unit or movement that provides an alternative to the formation. In some ways, the cohorts that happen prove that a formation is a formation, in a way. So Torino seems to be a bit critical of middle-class old time, his term there, especially when he quotes Ray Allen saying, quote, "Old time music is a nice way to be connected to the farm without getting up at 5 in the morning," unquote. Indeed, cohorts allow for part-time changes in habits and cultural orientation. This Goldilocks situation, just right, not one extreme or the other, is also part of his discussion of community. Remember Hast and her discussion of contra dances as institution light? Well, here Torino finds that the music dance cohort is not an imagined community, but a deeply felt, actual community. Somehow it's real. Now, Woolley discusses how old-time music represents the mythos of a simpler existence. This kind of ties into what we were just talking about from Torino. And playing old time, in her findings, brings revivalist musicians spiritually closer to a different way of life. This is what she means by, in her writing, as ethos, the moral side of things. In her view, the avoidance of commodification provokes the ethos of alienation or marginalization and protects the artifacts of old-time music, providing a surface-level openness that's also exclusive. You have to work your way into the community. It's hard. You have to play obscure, funky fiddle tunes, much more obscure and funky than the one I was playing earlier. So the process can be paradoxically both inclusive and exclusive. What sort of things do we do in the cohorts that we are a part of to include and exclude people? Think on that. Now, Woolley's discussion of the 1970s versus the 1990s old-time revivals finds that the Back to the Land movement in the 1970s and punk ideals in the 1990s are both contrarian. They're cohorts working within larger formations. Often they seek to do the opposite of the mainstream, where 1970s folks chose the agrarian utopia of the 19th century as their model. The 1990s revivalists chose the complex and troubled times of the late 1920s and early 30s, the Great Depression and Tin Pan Alley. Raucous times, she says, when old-time music was beginning to feel the effects of mass mediation and a generation split was taking place. Now, I think Woolley's characterization of old time as technology-mediated revival culture makes sense. I mean, we wouldn't know about the music if it weren't for recordings and other media. If you've ever spent much time with Roy Andrade, who's, actually this is the old time connection because his office is right through that wall. He's another professor here at ETSU who focuses on old time music. He has shaped the study of old time music here, and if you've spent much time with him, you might recognize his philosophy when Woolley states that the music now is, quote, an authentic action which includes creativity as part of the process. adding something new is as important as keeping it the same for old-time recreationists. Now, I have to say, Richard Jones Bamman provides the best one-chapter description of the contemporary old-time scene in the United States that I know of. Read it. If you're interested in instrument building, then I highly recommend the whole book, Building New Banjos for an Old-Time World. The discussion of the practical and philosophical negotiations made by old-time banjo makers is fascinating. We can talk about that some more another time if you'd like. For now, keep your ears open, and if you got them, play them.